I'm sure a lot of you guys came for the title of the video, which is something to the effect of, it's something about Trump's impeachment, right? There's a lot happening at this moment. And something I've noticed with my YouTube channel is the fact that anytime I talk politics, the numbers are really, really low. Like, it gets almost no views on YouTube. But when I upload the podcast to, like, Castbox and iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and all that other stuff, the numbers are way up. Like, it's super popular. It's a really popular subject on podcasts. I wonder if it's like YouTube censoring it or something. I don't know. I probably just got like demonetized for that, but who cares? This is my YouTube channel where this is the channel I talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. And I don't care about my language. I don't care about the subject or any of that other stuff. People will either watch or they won't. And I know that people will watch, especially listen in podcast form. That this seems to be a pretty popular thing in the podcast realm. So, tell you what, why don't we take a look at this impeachment situation with Trump, because there has been some breaking news with it recently. So this website, the first website I wanted to look at was, I think, CBS. Yeah, CBS News. So let's start at the top here. The latest news on the impeachment inquiry. The House voted mostly along party lines to approve a resolution establishing the procedures for the impeachment inquiry's next phase. The vote was 232 to 196, with 2 Democrats joining all Republicans in voting against passage. The resolution lays out the framework for public hearings and eventual proceedings in the Judiciary Committee, which would craft any potential articles of impeachment. Let me explain how impeachment works as far as I understand it now. I'm no expert on politics, but I keep up with it fairly closely, so bear with me through it, and I'll see if I can describe it as well as I understand it. Impeachment does not mean getting kicked out of office automatically. That's not necessarily what impeachment is. We've seen the words impeachment inquiry thrown around a lot. That's because an impeachment is actually just basically an investigation into the president. Like, should we put him on trial for crimes and then kick him out of office for those crimes? That's really what an impeachment is. It's just it starts out as an inquiry to see an investigation, to see what we do, what the next steps are. And then it moves to an impeachment trial. For the trial to move forward, from my understanding, the House of Representatives, which is, there are a total of 538 congressmen, and Congress includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, okay? There are 2 senators per state for a total of 100. So 538 congressmen total, minus the 100 senators, is 438 House members, House of Representatives. I believe I got that right. If that's incorrect, you can check the comments or the description in the podcast or on YouTube for the correction, but that's my understanding of it. So we got 438 people, which basically splits, they each represent a different district in a different state. So in West Virginia, where I live, you've got like district number 1, number 2, and number 3. So the next step after the House of Representatives votes on whether or not to go forward with an impeachment trial is the Supreme Court holds the trial, and the Senate acts as the acts as the jurors, the jury members. So here's what would happen if Trump were to go to impeachment trial, for example. He would sit in front of the Supreme Court, and the senators would sit there, hear out the case, and they would vote one way or another to kick him out of office, basically. That's my understanding of the situation. Like I said, it's a very, very complex process, and if I made some minor error in this, just check the description and there will be an update to it. But that's my understanding of it. So let's give this article a read now, a little bit further down, and see what it has to say about the impeachment process so far. The House voted along party lines mostly to approve a resolution establishing the procedures for the impeachment inquiry's next phase. The vote was 232 to 196, with 2 Democrats joining all Republicans in voting against passage. So it's an extremely partisan situation. That's really, really sad to me. This shouldn't be partisan. I don't want to see all Republicans voting for one thing and all Democrats voting for another thing. I don't feel like it should be like that. That's a sign that the system is broken to me. The resolution lays out the framework for public hearings and eventual proceedings in the Judiciary Committee, which would craft any potential articles of impeachment. A resolution authorizing public hearings and laying the groundwork for eventual proceedings in the Judiciary Committee passed by a vote of 232 to 196. All but 2 Democrats voted for the measure, with all Republican members voting against it. The chamber's sole independent joined Democrats in voting for a passage. 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat did not cast a vote. Interesting. Sadly, this is not any cause for any glee or comfort. This is something that is very solemn, that is prayerful. Why is it prayerful? I thought there was a separation of church and state situation going on here. Nothing in the Senate or the House or any other branch of government should be prayerful. Whatever. It's going to continue. Not going to freak out. Just going to continue. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said ahead of the vote. Of course it was Nancy Pelosi. I doubt anybody in this place or anybody that you know comes to Congress to take the oath of office, comes to Congress to impeach the President of the United States unless his actions are jeopardizing or honoring our oath of office. Weirdly worded. The vote was the first time the full House weighed in on the impeachment inquiry after weeks of Republican objections that Democrats were proceeding without a floor vote on the merits of the probe. Democrats dismissed those criticisms and argued such a vote to open an inquiry is not required under the Constitution, but introduced Thursday's resolution nonetheless, stressing the inquiry is already underway. Okay, so this was a vote basically to allow for the inquiry in the first place. So the Speaker of the House, which is Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, pushed forward the impeachment inquiry, and Republicans were unhappy about the fact that they didn't take a floor vote from every congressperson. So they did. So they took the floor vote, and it passed. So the inquiry is moving forward, and it's 100% legal and above board in every way so far. The House has formally pursued impeachment just 3 other times in U.S. history. 2 presidents, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, were eventually impeached but acquitted in Senate trials. Fascinating. I didn't know about Andrew Johnson. The third, Richard Nixon, resigned when it became clear he would be impeached by the House and removed by the Senate. Prior to the vote, Republican leaders denounced what they called the Soviet-style nature of the investigation thus far, citing the use of closed-door hearings and lack of due process for the president. Interesting. Well, the whole situation is, by its very nature, open door. I understand the investigation is probably closed door. I have no issue with investigations being closed door necessarily, for the sake of, not tainting information or evidence or anything like that. But the trial itself is going to be open door. There's no way around that. The Senate is going to sit as the jurors and judge whether or not the president should be able to, whether he should be kicked out of office or not. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what they mean by closed door, because it just does not make any sense in that context to me. The resolution approved Thursday authorizes the House Intelligence Committee to hold public hearings and craft a report to be delivered to the Judiciary Committee, where President Trump and his counsel will have the right to cross-examine witnesses and review evidence. Republicans can request testimony from witnesses in either committee, subject to approval of the Democratic chairman or a full committee vote. After receiving the report and holding its own hearings, the Judiciary Committee would be responsible for drafting any eventual articles of impeachment. There you go. So there's another article I wanted to look at, and it's called Fact Check. Is the Trump impeachment process different from Nixon and Clinton? So let's read this article. This is from NPR. Let's just see how it differs. So this starts out, it says, for the third time in almost 46 years, the House of Representatives has voted to begin a formal impeachment inquiry, which means they're starting an investigation into the actions of the sitting president. As we read earlier, is Andrew Johnson, Nixon, Clinton, and now Trump, I guess. total ever, from my understanding. And despite criticisms from President Trump, whose press secretary Stephanie Grisham called the resolution unfair, unconstitutional, and fundamentally un-American, the measure lawmakers approved Thursday charts a course similar to that of the inquiries into Presidents Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton. It's not unconstitutional. They are following the Constitution here completely, 100%. I'm really unclear about what's unconstitutional about this, or really what's unfair about it. This is the job. This is why we voted these people into office, to hold various different branches accountable. I would have absolutely no issue with this if there was an impeachment inquiry against, a Democrat instead of a Republican. I would love to get to the bottom of things. And this is an issue that's worthy of getting to the bottom of. Like, whether it's a legitimate issue or not, whether there was a quid pro quo with Trump or not, whatever the case, does not matter. That we should be allowed to investigate. That seems obvious to me. I don't understand what's unfair about that, or unconstitutional, or un-American. This is literally the American process. It couldn't possibly be more American than this. It says, the process allows for the investigation led by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, a Democrat from California, to continue with the next phase, including public hearings. Up till now, most of the investigation has been closed-door depositions involving Democrats and Republicans on 3 House panels: Intelligence Committee, Oversight, and Foreign Affairs Committees. The process seems very fair to me, said former Republican Representative Tom Campbell, who served in the House during the Clinton proceedings and voted for impeachment. He called the current plan very consistent with how the House operates in the 2 previous impeachment matters. Due process. This is a subheading here. Trump and Republican allies argue that that he and the GOP do not have enough power in the proceedings. Well, that's kind of the fucking nature of an impeachment. You don't have any power here because you're on trial. A defendant doesn't have power in a trial. They are being accused of something. White House Press Secretary Grisham said that with Thursday's vote, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have done nothing more than enshrine unacceptable violations of due process into House rules. I just want to point something out real quick. It's talking about the Speaker of the House here. Nancy Pelosi's the Speaker of the House. Before Nancy Pelosi was Paul Ryan. He was a Republican. And I think, I could be wrong here, I believe that Nancy Pelosi was actually the Speaker of the House before Paul Ryan, too. So it went Pelosi, Paul Ryan, and then Pelosi again. The Speaker of the House is third in line to become president if something were to happen. Like if there's like a plane crash or something, and the vice president and the president are decommissioned and, incapable of fulfilling their duties, then it goes to Speaker of the House. And then I think it goes to the Supreme Court Chief Justice, which is John Roberts at the moment, I believe. Anyway, continuing on with the article. Republican lawmakers have been allowed equal time for questioning in the closed-door depositions. They'll be allowed to request subpoenas and witnesses for the open hearings, but those would have to be approved by the Democrats. Schiff will eventually turn his findings over to the House Judiciary Committee, which would begin the formal process of determining whether to draw up articles of impeachment. House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, a Democrat from New York, has laid out additional details about the minority party's role for his panel. So there are obviously 2 primary political parties in our system. There's the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. There are other parties, but they're not really well represented in our political system. Like there's the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Independent Party, so on and so forth. The 2 primary ones are Republican and Democrat, right? In Congress, we have the minority party and the majority party. So right now, I think Democrats represent the majority in the House of Representatives. And that means there's going to be a majority leader and a minority leader. So the majority leader is going to be the person who handles a lot of the stuff for the Democrats. Like they handle pushing bills and getting votes and things like that. And then there's the minority leader, which in this case would be the Republican. I'm not sure who the minority leader is at this moment for the Republicans. And then there's something called the whip. That's getting a little bit more complicated. They go around and pressure people to vote the way they want them to vote. They're right below the minority leader. The president or his attorneys will be allowed to cross-examine witness and subpoena their own, although they'll need a majority vote or the concurrence of the chair to do so. They'll also be allowed to attend all hearings of the Judiciary Committee, including any that are closed to the public. Democrats say that these same rights were given to the minority party with Clinton in the late 90s and Nixon in the mid-70s. The resolution also says that if the president unlawfully refuses to cooperate with congressional requests, Nadler can deny requests by the president or his counsel, an apparent attempt to counter Trump's lack of cooperation with requests for documents and witnesses. Another talking point for Republicans is that the investigation has been largely hidden from public view. I feel like that's part of the reason behind that is because Republicans and Trump more specifically are really good at gaining public favor, garnering public favor. And I think people are a little concerned that if they released it publicly, Trump and or the Republicans would find a way to kind of soften the details and make it a little bit less realistic or blunt as it is. That's my assumption about what they think might happen. It says, it is, by any definition, a process that is an attempt in secret, in the basement of the Capitol, to unseat a duly elected president of the United States, said House Republican Conference Chair Liz Cheney on Thursday. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. We've seen this before, and it is 100% constitutional. It's enshrined in the Constitution. We have this process to protect the American people from abuse of power. But both the Clinton and Nixon investigations had a mix of closed and open phases. Independent counsel Kenneth Starr's investigation into Clinton also used closed-door interviews and grand jury proceedings that were not open to Congress until later. The Nixon investigation was a bit different. It started out as investigation into the Watergate break-in, noted Thomas Allen Schwartz, a professor of history and political science at Vanderbilt University. So there were, of course, the very famous Watergate hearings in the summer of '73 that went on at great length that were sort of a national obsession, he said. And the question, you know, the famous Howard Baker question, what did the president know and when did he know it? After the Watergate hearings ended, though, the Judiciary Committee also conducted several closed-door hearings as it proceeded with impeachment. So here's the subheading called Key Differences. These are the key differences between the different impeachment hearings. Campbell, who now teaches law at Chapman University, says one difference between the process this time and when Clinton was impeached was the information lawmakers had. In 1998, he says, House members voted to authorize an impeachment inquiry only after they received the Starr report. Kenneth Starr, the report that Kenneth Starr turned in. Starr investigated, among other things, whether Clinton lied about the affair he had with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. This is, such a ridiculous impeachment inquiry, over Clinton. I mean, over Bill Clinton. Who cares if the dude did this? I don't know. I'm just looking at this with hindsight glasses right now. And it seems like such an absurd thing to freak out about and try to get a president impeached over. In the end, they impeached him over lying under oath about sleeping with her or not. That sounds so ridiculous to me, honestly. Whatever, you know? It is what it is. It's over now. So anyway, let's just continue with this and see what else it has to say. These are the key differences between Clinton and Trump's impeachment. So in that sense, Campbell said, every member of the House had available to her or him the findings of this special prosecutor. Now, in this case, that's not so, unless one refers to Robert Mueller's report. Another difference, looking back to the Watergate era, is the political climate. Something else to make note of about Watergate is the fact that really one of the biggest issues with Watergate wasn't what happened necessarily. I mean, that was bad enough. But it was what he did to try to cover it up. That was one of the really serious problems. Like, he tried to bribe people and everything. It was ugly. Anyway, let's continue on. This president retains a very strong support within his party in a way that Richard Nixon really lost or did not have the same degree of loyalty. Professor Schwartz says, he also has a media platform that Nixon did not have. The media environment was very different. It's true. Twitter didn't even exist back then. The internet didn't exist back then, really. Not as it does now, anyway. The bipartisan nature of the Nixon impeachment inquiry had evaporated by the time Clinton was impeached. Michigan Democrat John Conyers argued against impeaching Clinton on the House floor at the time, saying, "I am witnessing the most tragic event of my career in Congress. In effect, a Republican coup d'etat in process." The era of partisanship and polarization present then is still very much present today, as evidenced by Grisham's charge that the Democrats are choosing every day to waste time on a sham impeachment, a blatantly partisan attempt to destroy the president. It's not partisan. The accusations made are very, very serious. This is not over like it was with Clinton. The accusations are serious. True or not, whether they're true or not, they're serious. And an inquiry into the claims, at the very least, is warranted. The fact that that these people, Grisham and others, are freaking out and saying we shouldn't even be investigating it, it's a sham, is disturbing to me. If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I'm trying to make a shirt design for every cult I've covered. I haven't gotten every one, but I'm working on it. So check it out and see if your cult is up there. Second, you can support me by checking out my game shop. I sell controller, cartridge, and game box stands for every system from the original Nintendo and Sega Game Gear to the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. So give that a look too. And finally, if you want to support me in some way other than monetarily, you can check out my other YouTube channels. I have a retro game channel where I answer questions like, why does Shy Guy have a mask? And why are CRT TVs the best way to play retro games? I also have the podcast where I talk about stuff I don't feel I can say on a monetized channel. And finally, I have my main channel where I talk about cults. I wish I didn't have to worry about dancing around subjects carefully in the first place, but I chose to do this as a full-time job, so unfortunately I rely on YouTube's AdSense and on the support of patrons to continue doing the work I do. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.